is currently November 27th, 2022. Today is the very first day of preliminary research for this project, trying to figure out what's son cubano, what is Indian classical music, and what differentiates them from the rest of the music that we typically hear here in our Western culture. And basically just try and find what I can use in my song. Today I'm going to listen to a lot of music, and hopefully tomorrow I'll have quite a grasp on what I'm dealing with here. We start today. Here we go. Hi, it is currently November 30th, 2022. I'm losing track of the days here, and this is the culmination of my hours of research into son cubano and Indian classical music. Around me, these sticky notes contain son cubano and Indian classical form, harmony, melody, instruments, ornamentations, rhythms, lyrics, pretty much everything I need to assemble a song. And I don't even think I've scratched the surface yet, to be honest with you. There is so much unique quality that each of these genres has to offer that just demands to be listened to. But unfortunately, it's hard to find the time, and it's very difficult to take every single one and put it into one big song. That would be far too complicated. But I think I've narrowed it down. And so now I had to do what I'm most excited for, and that is to take these elements, meld them together, and see if I can create some harmony. Pun intended. Okay, now to clean these up. Well, my friends, the time has come. Raise the roof and have some fun. I've pretty much hit the end of my puzzle stage in putting together all these different categories and characteristics. Based on the 5 categories, I think I've put together a pretty general idea of what my song is going to sound like, how it's going to be formed, what the themes are going to be, what instruments are going to happen, what's the rhythm. I think I've essentially put together a very general structure. Of course, now I have to compose it, but what I have here is something that I'm extremely excited about. Well, that was definitely an interesting process. In the next couple of days, I'm going to start putting the song together and really hearing it for the first time. These wonderful elements fitting together in perfect unison. And I can't wait. See you then. Okay, it is currently December 4th, 2022, and I spent a long time last night composing the song, putting together all the elements, hearing them, making up melodies, composing, improvising, everything, all the works. And so before I play you my song, I don't really want to leave you in the dust, so let's cover all of the elements that I chose to be in the song. Listen to them, hear what they sound like, so that when you listen to the song, you can actually tune in and figure out exactly what it's comprised of. And it ended up turning into a song that sounds both Cuban and Indian, which is kind of unbelievable. So I'm very excited to tell you about all of these. Let's start at the very beginning. Let's start with rhythm. So for rhythm, if you have a very careful ear, you're going to notice something called the 3-2 clave. The 3-2 clave is the essential son cubano rhythm. It is unbelievable how many son cubano songs actually use this thing. So it's 2 bars of 4 beats that basically repeat, and this is what the rhythm sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's really cool, it's really shuffly, it's really groovy, and it really fits in between the beats. I love that synchronization, and it was so exciting to discover this Cuban rhythm. These rhythms are really hard to get, very hard to master. Not that I've mastered them or anything, but they're quite complicated. There's also another rhythmic element that I included called the tumbay. Now tumbay is a type of rhythmic pattern that falls in between those clave rhythms, and it's usually divided between the instruments. I found this really wonderful resource on an article called The Cuban Son as Form, Genre, and Symbol. It's this big glossary, all of these tumbays with all the instruments that usually play them, and so I stole a couple of those. I stole a couple of those for the song, but don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone I did that. Let's move on to harmony. So the rhythm section of my song is entirely Cuban, but the harmony section is entirely Indian classical. Indian classical music has this thing called the raga. The raga is a set of pitches and pretty much a formula for how to use them, similar to our Western scales. Their real purpose is also to invoke emotion. In fact, I think that's their main purpose. And ragas are pretty much ancient. They've been around in Indian classical music since the very, very beginning, thousands of years ago. Now, there are up to 500 ragas allegedly. A lot of people don't really know for sure. But I decided to pick 2 common ones to include in my song, and I'll play those for you right now. So the first is called the kafi, yes, kafi, and it has a flat 3rd and a flat 7th. So let's play the kafi with the flat 3 and the flat 7. And so on that raga, I formed a lot of great chords, a lot of great melodies, and a lot of great improvisations. But with every raga comes this thing called the shalan. Remember I was saying before that the raga has a specific formula that it's supposed to be used in? Well, the shalan is that formula. Think of the raga like a box of macaroni and cheese, and the shalan is like the instructions on the side that tell you to put it in the stove top and put the water in and the butter. I don't know. I don't even know. So for that kafi raga, you can use it in the way that I just did, or you can use it with the shalan, which is a specific melody. It sounds like this. And as you can tell, that's a really, really nice melody, and that's essentially what they say that you should use the kafi for. You should use it to play that melody. And yeah, I did. You're gonna hear that melody come up a lot in the song. But I couldn't just use one raga, I wanted to use another one, so the next one I used is called the Bhairav. The Bhairav. And the Bhairav sounds really unbelievable. Let me play it for you. It has a flattened 2nd and a flattened 6th. I mean, come on. You need to hear that again. I need to hear that again. So I had to use the Bhairav as well. So you're going to hear that pop up a lot in the song as well. So that comprises basically our harmony. Our rhythm is Cuban, our harmony is Indian classical music. And if you know the syllables or the solfege in Western classical music, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. Well, India has their own solfege, and it's called the sargam. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, re, sa. So they have their own classifications, which I also found super cool. And the reason why I chose these 2 ragas is because, well, number 1, I really like the sound, but number 2, you can find them in a lot of Indian classical music. They're incredibly common, and I wanted to choose something that was common so that it could be easily related to Indian classical music. In fact, you're going to notice that the majority of the things that I chose are just things that I really like the sound of, or also thought would fit together really well. Now, the biggest revelation that I found is that the Cuban rhythm and the Indian classical music harmony fits unbelievably well together. You're going to hear that in the song. It was a huge eureka moment. I had lots of eureka moments during this entire process, but that was probably the biggest one. Hearing those 2 come together was really, really wild. And now we move on to the instrument section. So So I've chosen 6 instruments to be present in my song. One of those instruments is the piano, which provides some foundation and some harmony and some chords, which you will hear. But the rest of the instruments are from both Indian classical music and son cubano. But in terms of Cuban, we have the clave, which will be playing throughout pretty much the entire piece. And guess what the clave is playing? You guessed it, the clave rhythm, the 3-2 clave rhythm. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Claves are like the earliest son cubano instrument. They're the instrument that dancers often listen to sort of follow along with the song. And their appearance is these 2 hollow dowels of wood. They're clicked together and they make this very distinctive clicking sound that just sort of permeates above every other instrument. And now I will demonstrate what they sound like. It's got a very high pitch, it's got a very clicky sound. It was the perfect thing to essentially keep the rhythm going throughout the entire song. Next instrument. The next Cuban instrument I picked are the bongos. Now the bongos are the classic son cubano instrument. It's been argued that you cannot have son cubano without bongos. They come from eastern Cuba. They're these very small drums with open bottoms held between the legs. One is larger than the other. The bongos, along with the clave, help to keep the rhythm going in most son cubano songs and now in mine. And most people tend to know what the bongo sounds like, but I'm going to play it for you as a little demonstration. And the last Cuban instrument in my song, the trumpet. Now the trumpet didn't originate from Cuba, but they're very important in the development of son cubano. They came into son cubano during the 30s, so I thought it would be very significant. Though it is a later development, it actually made quite an impact on son cubano, and I would also say it made an impact on why we are listening to it here in Canada. So I had to include it in my song. And the last 2 instruments I included in my song are both from India. The first is called the sitar, and the second is called the bansuri. Now, I'm very excited for these instruments. The sitar is this plucked instrument from North India, very guitar-like, but also very far at the same time. It can have up to 23 strings, but not very many are played. Only about 7 or so are actually played. The rest are called sympathetic strings. What they do is they create this sort of drone-like sound that goes throughout the piece. There's one sitar that plays some melody lines and some improvisation, and then there's another sitar that goes whoa. And it sort of just drones throughout the piece, which is so cool. So the one that will be playing the melody will sound like this. And then the one that will be whoa, droning sounds like this. And the next instrument, the bansuri, is essentially this flute from India. It's made from bamboo. It's an ancient instrument. It was used thousands of years ago when Indian classical music first came into fruition. I noticed it was used a lot for sort of embellishment, but also a lot of melodies. So that's what I'm going to do with my song. The bansuri sounds like this. Just makes you want to fly above the clouds and drift off into dreamland. Some of these instruments are plucky, some of these instruments are very percussive, some of them are smooth and legato, and some of them rise above every other instrument because they just have such a distinct sound. So I feel like this is a very wide spectrum of different instruments that we can do. I just had a voice crack, but I'm not retaking that. And once again, just like the rhythms and the harmonies came together, the instruments that played them also came together really, really well. Okay, I think that comprises everything. So now that you know what you're going to be hearing, I think it's time for you to hear it.